The good news is we're prepared to help you. You have yet to realize how much help and support is waiting for you at Bakersfield College. Learn more now on Equity TV. Welcome to Equity TV. I'm Francis Mayer, and this is a production of Bakersfield College where we cut through your excuses. Now, if you're sitting at home watching Equity TV this morning and you're wondering why things aren't going just a little bit better, wonder no further. There are answers waiting for you at Bakersfield College. We have people on this show of all ages, of all economic situations, and the thing that they all have in common is that they came to BC, and from that point forward, things got a little bit better. And our first guest of the morning is no exception to that. His name is Leonel Martinez, and he's a technical writer for the Kern High School District, correct?
Or actually, Kern County Superintendent of Schools.
Kern County Superintendent of Schools, yes, thank you.
But I like the way you said Leonel, though. That was
we're going to give that part of it an A. And you, going back, you were definitely a Leonel. You grew up in a situation that wasn't necessarily tailored to succeeding in college, was it?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, if you would have picked out the person that was most likely to succeed when I was in grammar school, I probably would have been last on the list. I had a lot of obstacles against me. One of them, of course, was the language barrier. I didn't speak in English at all until I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
So Spanish was the first?
Spanish was the only language.
Only language spoken at home.
And then right before I started kindergarten, my parents started speaking to me in English because they knew, hey, you need to learn in order to get a public education. So, but I still struggled with the language all the way through school, probably till I was in the 6th grade when it kind of started clicking in. By that time, I think by the time I was in 3rd grade, rather, I was reading 6th grade level books. And I knew I had an affinity for writing because in 3rd grade, one of my teachers gave us a notebook that was made out of construction paper, the blue construction paper we all used to use when we were in grammar school. Put it together, and we were supposed to copy sentences from the blackboard. And what I would do was copy her sentences, then continue with my own, because I just liked the way it felt to write. They've defined writing style as a sound that words make on paper. I like the sound words make on paper, so well, that's all I've ever done for a living is write. But you know, if you would have thought about it, if you would have seen me when I was in grammar school, again, the obstacles were there. Single parent family, farm worker family. My grandfather never made more than $20,000 a year. He was the head of the household. Always lived in farm housing where you could hear the rats skitter across the ceiling at night and the holes in the wall and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't think you would have picked me as most likely to succeed.
No, and sometimes that happens from an early age. People can get kind of shoehorned into a spot that maybe they don't want to be shoehorned into.
Right.
But for Pete's sake, in the 2nd grade, no one would have predicted that your entire professional life would consist of writing for a living.
Right.
You are a writer through and through.
It's all I've ever done. It's pretty fortunate. I mean, I'm not going to become a famous novelist, but all I've ever done to put food on the table for my kids is right, and that's a hell of a lot better than digging a ditch, I could tell you that.
Oh, amen it is, and that's honorable work, but I think it's harder, especially if you're in a position that you were in, which was a little bit later in life. You were well into adulthood anyway. It came time to make a change professionally for you.
Yes, that's true.
And were you in a position to be able to do that with some comfort, or was the job search tough? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was scary. I got a tip from a friend. As you know, maybe some people don't, though. I worked for 15 years as a reporter before I became a technical writer. 6 of them were at the Lamont Reporter, Arvin Tiller, which are news weeklies over about 20 miles here from Bakersfield. And then I got a job here at the Bakersfield Californian as a full-time reporter, and I stayed here for 9 years. But I got a tip from a friend who said, you know, if anybody's interested in leaving, here's a tip. The Kern County Superintendent of Schools is hiring 2 positions. Tell everybody who's interested that they can apply. And what I did was what any smart guy would have done. I hung up, but I didn't tell anybody because why would I increase the competition? So I applied really not knowing what would happen, whether they were looking for somebody like me or somebody completely different. The position at that point was called Public Information Specialist, which sounds like a PR position, but it actually it functions, at least in our department, more like a technical writer. And since then, our position name has changed to technical writer. I applied, long story short, I became number 1 on their list. The more I heard about what the position actually entailed, the more I said, heck yeah, I could do this. I could do this for a living. I won't lie, the first 6 months were very, very difficult because the transition, the type of writing that we do in technical writing is much more formal, much more dealing with educational concepts and so forth. It was difficult to get used to that, but 6 months to a year later, I was certain it was the best career move I've ever made. And I'm still certain. 17 years almost later, I'm certain.
And it all started at Bakersfield College. And before we get into how you got started, I want to point out that learning a core skill like writing, it is a trade, just like being a plumber or an electrician. Everywhere you look where you see written words, whether it's on the back of a cereal box or the instructions inside your gadget, there was a copywriter or a technical writer who sat down and banged that out and wrote it in a way that hopefully was readable for you, and you were able to learn how to use that tool or that product. And where did you go to get those skills initially?
Writing, I heard Stephen King one time say that there are two things you have to do to become a writer. You have to read a lot and you have to write a lot. And that's what I did because of the fact that I was an only child living out of the country for most of my life. I didn't have any friends that I could play with. So my friends were books.
Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer.
Exactly. All those Jules Verne, stacks and stacks of comic books.
Sure.
And the more I read, the more I learned to write, the more I would ask myself, why does that sound good? Why do I like the way that writing rings in my ear? And I was able to pick it up by the time I was in high school, do some great teachers. I started thinking, maybe that I really can do this for a living. Maybe it's not just a hobby. And I actually picked up my first paying job. It probably paid nothing. I can't remember what it paid per column inch, when you start out, for the Arvid Tiller writing sports. I think I was a sophomore or a junior in high school. Man, I thought I'd hit the big time. I was probably getting $5 an article or something like that. But I thought I'd made it.
But you were a writer.
Getting paid, yeah.
Absolutely. Now you had to make a jump though, from your humble agricultural roots, and those are awesome marketplaces. I grew up in a logging town myself, and so I feel a bit of kinship with those outlying communities in Kern County. But you had to get an education, and I know that you were on the track, and I think you got accepted at Cal State right out of high school, didn't you?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting story. What happened was, right out of high school, I applied for it, was accepted at Cal State Bakersfield, and I actually attended for a week or two. But to be completely honest, the culture shock was just so intense for me.
Well, you're still in Bakersfield.
So different. Yeah, but it was so different from I grew up with a bunch of students who were from the lower on the socioeconomic scale, mostly farm worker kids or Dust Bowl people, Okies and Arkies. The parents came across, they were mechanics, they were farm workers, they were gardeners. And then to go to a place where mom might be a dentist, dad might be a college professor, and where you see, more expensive cars in the parking lot where I didn't have a car. Nobody in my school had a car. Now you go to parking lots of typical high school, and the cars from the seniors look more expensive than the ones from the teachers. That wasn't the case when I was in school. But it was just so different that it caused a lot of anxiety for me. And I actually dropped out, and I spent a semester asking myself, is this education thing really, really something that I want to do? And I came to the conclusion, no, there's just no way I'm not going to get a degree. That's just not in my fate, because I'd been told all along while I was growing up by my parents, my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my grandma, my grandpa, that I would get an education, that I would go on to succeed in college, and I knew that was still a possibility for me. So what I did is I went and registered at BC at Bakersfield College. I think I graduated from there about 81. But the transition was so much smoother for me because the kids demographically were a lot more like I was. There were a lot more working class kids. And I had a few friends even that were going to the same class as I was. So it was actually a lot more difficult. I think in those 2 years I really grew up a lot. And I was able to transfer to Cal State and make it successfully, never look back. But that first semester where I tried to succeed at Cal State, it was just so difficult for me. Looking back, it was.
No, I can relate to that. I remember when I first moved to Bakersfield, I met a girl who was definitely from the other side of the tracks, and she invited me over to have dinner at her parents' house, and it was in the Bakersfield Country Club. She gave me the address, and I rode my bike because that's what I had, right? And her mom was not happy to see me at the front door. Clearly, I shouldn't have worn shorts to the blank household. And I remember midway through the meal, she told me never to call her by her first name again, that she was Mrs. Blank. And I was like, what am you hillbilly? Get out of here. Go back home and get a job at the mill. What are you doing? And then at the end of the meal, this was like the coup de grace, her dad says, hey, I don't want you to have to ride your bike home. Why don't you put your bike in the back of my truck? And I was like, oh, finally, a truck. Right. I know trucks.
Yeah.
We go out to It wasn't a truck. It
wasn't
was a Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah,
He was going to fold the seats down. I was like, no, this is a luxury car where I'm from. Oh,
Yeah,
my
you were
God.
expecting a battered white Chevrolet, which is what I would have got
Yeah.
when I was at Auburn High.
Yes.
That's what if the kids had any car at all, that's what it was.
And, those little things, they are a big deal. They're touchstones. They make you feel like you belong. And it
That's
goes
exactly
beyond
right.
language, right?
That's
it's a
exactly
cultural
right.
language.
You go to a place and you think, I don't belong here because nobody else is like me. I'll give you another example. When I was at grammar school, all through my first 4 or 5 years, I never had any teachers who were Hispanic. None. And then I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I remember we had a teacher assistant. It was a teacher in training from Cal State who came and was helping out the regular teacher. And I remember being almost in shock, thinking, wow, I guess Hispanics can be teachers after all. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought maybe it's not possible for Hispanics to be teachers because I've never seen one. It's almost a subconscious thing, really, but you know it's true because you've felt it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't see people that look like you that are succeeding, you're like, man, I'm not good enough to be the first man on the moon. Like, geez Louise.
Yeah.
But you were, and you broke through, and you've made a career doing something that you feel passionate about. It started at Bakersfield College, and I think that is the single best sales pitch that anybody could give, beyond the fact that the Brookings Institute has recognized us as one of the best junior colleges in the nation.
Congratulations on that, by the way. I saw that.
Thank you.
Oh, you guys deserve it. I mean, I give all credit to Bakersfield College. There were some wonderful professors there. I know you hear otherwise, but that certainly was not my experience. I had a wonderful time there, and I think very solid education.
And now, when you get down to tax for guys who came from working class households like you and I did, BC's affordable. It's doable.
Exactly. More of an issue than it used to be, right? But
Absolutely,
it's definitely an option.
Well, Mr. Martinez, thank you for sharing your success story with us. If you're someone out there who gets tickled by the sounds of words on paper, you can make a living at it too. But a good first stop is Bakersfield College. Coming up, more success stories. Plus, Christine Din is going to have an interesting conversation with someone from Cal State Bakersfield who also knows what it's like to be an outsider. That's coming up next on Equity TV.